Hey you guys, welcome back to Interpret Your World. My name is Carla, and if you are barely starting out in the interpretation world and you want to know what goes into being a good interpreter, then stay tuned. This is the video for you. Consecutive interpreting involves many skills. When all of these skills are used together, they allow an individual to recall long utterances with high precision and repeat them back in a different language. As a beginner, you might have used these skills individually, but getting them to sync and work together is going to take both time and practice. In this video, we're going to briefly review all of the skills that you must also master in unison to your note-taking in order to improve as an interpreter. These skills include active listening, note-taking, translation, short-term memory, long-term memory, mastery of the languages you're working with, knowledge of vocabulary of the field you interpret for, verbal communication, cultural understanding of the languages you work with, creating and remembering a system of symbols, analyzing and discerning speech into notes. Studies show that we can only recall less than 50% of what is being said to us. For this reason, a skill you must also master is active listening. Active listening involves the act of paying attention and receiving a clear message without judgment. You have to really listen and not just hear the speaker, and even then, there will be times where you do not hear or understand something. If this happens, you have to clarify with the speaker all of the points that were not clear to you or ask for a repetition. Note-taking can seem challenging at first, but like all things, it also gets easier the more you practice it. Notes are a map of what someone has said. They present landmarks that, when followed and understood, help you remember an utterance. This is a very useful tool in the interpreter toolkit. You have to be swift at translating words and interpreting ideas on the spot. One thing to remember is that for the most part, you will be interpreting ideas. Take idioms, for example. If you translate "in a nutshell," literally, it might not make sense in many languages. In this case, you would have to interpret meaning to make sense. Interpretations for "in a nutshell" include briefly, in short, or in summary, depending on context. A good short-term memory will improve your interpretation skills. Short-term memory is what allows you to recall things quickly, like a phone number that was just mentioned but will quickly fade away. Short-term memory will allow you to recall the message after you hear it. It will help you to piece back the story that you have written in your notes. Long-term memory is your mind's ability to store memories for a long time. Anything you can recall, like language or childhood memories, are long-term memory. This is useful because it will allow you to create a system of symbols for note-taking and to remember vocabulary, just to name a few benefits. Understanding how your brain creates long-term memories will go a long way in your interpretation career. This should come as an obvious one. There is no way to interpret if you are not fluent in your pair languages, right? A college level or slightly below that should suffice for most jobs, but there will be times where a higher level might be needed depending on the client. It never hurts to brush up on new ways to improve your knowledge of your language pair. Reading books is always a good way to improve your language skills. Some of you will go into specialized fields that use very technical terms you've probably never heard of. It is your duty to master the vocabulary in your field to be a professional interpreter. An example of this can be a medical interpreter that has to learn and be familiarized with the medical terms necessary to give an accurate interpretation. You will have to constantly and consistently practice and expand your vocabulary. As an interpreter, it is your job to provide an accurate and clear rendition every time. You have to make sure enunciation, pronunciation, and ideas are clear for an effective communication between the speakers. This is the main job of an interpreter, to provide an easy means of communication between two parties that speak different languages. In order to accomplish this, you must implement all of the tools that are also mentioned in this video. This is a tough one for beginner interpreters, since you have not been exposed to the cultures of all the different countries where your pair languages are used. As an example, we can take Great Britain, Australia, and the United States. All of these countries speak the same language. Due to culture, regionalism, and slang, there are words and expressions that will not translate literally between countries, and you must know what they mean to be able to interpret them. A constant exposure to different cultures as an interpreter will get you on your road to an accurate interpretation for different cultures. This is necessary for note-taking. You must develop a system of symbols that will assist you in reducing words to a single symbol or two. Once you have created the system of symbols, you must also take the grueling task of remembering each symbol. Some symbols you will implement right away. Others will take practice, and a lot of them you will forget. Don't give up. Do it at your own pace and work hard at developing your own symbols. With enough practice, you will be able to reduce messages to those essential parts that will trigger your memory. It sure beats the impossible task of trying to write down complete sentences while listening to the speaker. If we take into account that the average person speaks at 125 to 150 words per minute, and the average handwriting speed is 5 to 20 words per minute, we can see why your notes should be brief, but must also include all the important points made by the speaker. As you can see from the information that was presented, note-taking is just a single tool in your interpreter's toolkit. You now know what other skills you have to master, and not just note-taking in your future profession. As a beginner, this might be a lot to digest. Don't fret, this information is not presented to discourage you. It is intended to show you that to improve your note-taking, you must also improve all of the other skills mentioned, and that note-taking must not be viewed in isolation, since it is always used along with the rest of the tools available to you. To recap, the skills are active listening, note-taking, translation, short-term memory, long-term memory, mastery of the languages you're working with, knowledge of the vocabulary of the field you interpret for, verbal communication, cultural understanding of the languages you work with, creating and remembering a system of symbols, analyzing and discerning speech into notes. If you liked this video and it was useful, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and share it with other beginner interpreters or interpreters that might need this information. Happy interpreting!